It is my pleasure, and I mean that, Bruce, to introduce to you our luncheon speaker today. Bruce Chaloux is, by title, Student Access Programs and Services, Southern Regional Education Board. Those of you who are new to the consortium, I want you to know that Bruce was closely involved with us, and in fact, Bruce served on the selection committee that Dr. Felita Williams and I co-chaired. And Bruce brought to us insight, and some of the institutions that are with us today are actually part of his wisdom, which was we needed a pipeline, and so we offered some capacity building opportunities for institutions. And so Bruce is very, very aware not only of what the Adult Learning Consortium and the University System of Georgia are doing, but he's here to give us a challenge, I would say, about where we go next. Without further ado, Dr. Chaloux.
That's right. Well, good afternoon. The bromide after your lunch. And the lunch didn't need bromide, by the way, just to say. It was, meals have been terrific. Thank you for the invitation, Mary Ellen, and all the Valdosta folks and everyone else, the Board of Regents staff. It really is a pleasure to be with you and to have participated over the last couple of days and gotten a sense of what you're all about. I'm looking back at Mike, and I said to Mary Ellen, let me just kind of hang around, go to sessions, and typical for me to say, oh, I got to get involved and ask some questions, which I did, and people have been very nice to respond to those questions. But I'm going to kind of pull some things together. So one of the things that I've added are several slides, Mike, based upon the conversation that we walked through the line yesterday at lunch on the federal regulation, state authorization. I'm not going to get into credit hour stuff and gainful employment. I'm just going to deal with one of the triumvirate of issues and to give you a little bit more detail because there has been some work that's gone on since. I think when I addressed some of you who were at the Valdosta State meeting in February, my admonition at that time was this thing's coming and you need to get ready for it. Mike made a comment that you guys have been doing some things, so I'll update you on that. But I want to start, I should also say, we concocted the title to give me as wide a berth as possible. That's good and bad. It's good in the sense that I get to pick some things. It's maybe not so good because Marilyn doesn't actually know what I'm going to say. So. But she's read the slides, so. But I want to make a couple of observations before I actually get into the slides. This is where it gets really dangerous. I just want to applaud the model, the approach, the strategy, the discussions, the effort that's gone on in Georgia, because I can now go out on the road and say, look at the Georgia model. And actually, it happened last week. I was at a meeting in Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has been a leader in adult learning, or at least a perceived leader in adult learning for several years. They have really done a nice job, particularly at getting at the adult population that does not have a high school diploma and getting them to diploma status through GED. A lot of effort, a lot of work. Many of you have probably seen that commercial with up the down staircase, the guy who's trying to walk up a staircase that's going down, and that was a Kentucky campaign. Very successful. And they launched an adult post-secondary effort called Project Graduate. Well, they brought five of us in to meet with staff and a couple of institutional reps last week. Best described as a kind of a graduate seminar. We sat around the table and there was an agenda, but there was not an agenda of we've got to answer these 8 questions. So we started with a set of questions and then had a great conversation. We don't do enough of that. We really don't do enough of that in this business. What were they after from these 5 people from outside the state? What do we do next? What should we be doing with our adult learning initiative? And I'm scratching my head saying, wait a minute, graduate. But now that you've raised the question, let me give you a few suggestions. And one of my suggestions was you need a statewide adult learning consortium. You got to look at what they're doing in Georgia. And I wish I had had that meeting after this meeting, because I would have even said it in a more bold way. The acronym stuff was great. Trish, I know goal. I just the G-Tracks thing. This stuff. It's terrific, Tanya. Degree Works, marvelous tools. And I really like the fact that you're starting to integrate and think about these tools as usable tools for the adult learner. Because most of these tools that we have tend to be not looked at as being adult-friendly, and they can be. And I saw examples from the Valdosta State efforts. Your PLA efforts are just terrific. The model is different than most of what we're seeing with states. Your model is, let's craft a strategy, and then let's start to fill in the strategy with how we actually make it operational, and then we launch. And most of them are firing and then aiming before they're even ready. And I would say to you that that's what we saw in Kentucky. So here I am going from pointing at Kentucky as look at what they're doing with Project Graduate to saying to them, you go to the website, the CPE website, you look at Project Graduate, not easy to find, but you find it, and then it drives you out to an institution, and you look at the University of Louisville, and they say, yes, we are part of Project Graduate. Here's what we offer. And then you go to the University of Kentucky, and yes, we're part of Project Graduate, and here's what we offer. And it's like the two institutions have never taught. There's no goal. There's no Degree Works. Some take PLA, some don't take PLA. My point being that the model that you folks are on is really a workable model. So I'm going to go out and tell the world, my limited world, exactly what I'm going to do. So, what you're doing. So here's my after lunch menu. After the peach cobbler, you get 5 more options. The Georgia Challenge. Some of this data you've seen. There's some new data that's just out by SREB. In fact, I got a sneak peek of a report, what we call a fact book bulletin that is going to be handed out at the board meeting in 2 weeks in North Carolina. So I'll share a little bit of that with you. I want to spend a few minutes talking about No Time to Waste. In the back of your packets is the No Time to Waste report. I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about that. A little quiz for you on do you know this person? And then Mike, for all of us, a little bit of a state authorization, and then an update on the adultlearner.org site. And then I don't run out of time before I head back home to repack. And some of you, again, you've seen some of this. High marks in Georgia. We do a great job of getting young people through high school. And we do a very good job of getting young people who have graduated from high school into college. But then it tails off. It trails off. We, and I say we in Georgia, I've been living here now for 14 years, so I consider myself a Georgia. My driver's license is in Georgia. And my other driver's license is in Louisiana. I spent so much time down there. But so we're well above the national average in those things. But Tanya made a comment from the railing upstairs in the previous session about progression, and we need to get people to degree completion. And I appreciate the fact that that's on the radar screen of the Chancellor, the Board of Regents. It ought to be on the radar screen of every one of our institutions, because the numbers just don't play to our advantage. So we can talk all we want about, we're doing all of these great things, and we've made these great investments in post-secondary education. We have lovely campuses and great programs and great faculty and terrific resources. And then you look at the numbers, and if you were not in our business and you looked at those numbers, you would say, wow, this is a model of success. It's troublesome. And in fact, one of the things that's happening is legislators, not only in this state, but in most of our SREB states, and I would argue most of of state legislators around the country have now reached the point where they've said, okay, higher ed, we've made these investments. You need to do a better job of producing what you're about, which is graduate. So our 6-year graduation rates, a couple of charts. These will be updated fall 2008 data with a new fact book that is coming out in August or September. Thank God I don't have to work on the fact book. I can just look at the results of the fact book. But you'll be getting copies of those shortly. So you can see where Georgia trails not only, well, this is, I'm sorry, I've jumped a slide ahead. This is on the estimates of recent high school graduates. We get them in. We get them in at higher levels than both the region and the nation. But somehow they get lost in the shuffle. They leave. So the U.S. at 55%. This is for 6-year entering fall. So we're talking about 2008 data again. SREB at 53% and Georgia at 50%. So somebody's seen those figures, whether they're coming from SREB or wherever they're coming from, and it's an issue. It's an issue. Now, for those of us who are involved with the adult degree completion effort, this is a sweet spot. Why? Because back of the envelope calculation, the 42 million 25 and older adults, let's all assume that they're adults at that stage, who have some college and no degree in the country. 42, 43 million. I've talked to a couple of folks who do stats, and I said, tell me if I'm really off on the back of the envelope calculation. We're producing every year in the country another 1 million 25-year-olds. In other words, 24-year-olds become 25-year-olds with some college and no degree. We're going to be at 50 million, folks. We're going to be at 50 million in a couple of years. Now, we can look at that and kind of say, woe is us, or we can look at that. You, I think, are looking at that, and some other states are looking at that, and the Lumina Foundation and others are looking at that, saying, this is a market. Go after the market. Create programs that will, in fact, bring those adults back into degree activity that leads to degrees. And so SREB is saying that, and you're doing that with your effort. We're also saying in the No Time to Waste, and I'll bounce around here a little bit, that we need to do a better job of preparing our high school students for the rigors of college. And, Tanya, I'm using different words to say what you said upstairs, once we get them to our campuses, keep them. Wrap ourselves around those young people. And we don't do that. We don't do a great job of that. There are institutions in the country that do. I use the term the Ivy League effect. And people say, yeah, you're talking about the cream of the cream that go off to Princeton and Yale and Harvard and Dartmouth and Penn. Don't ask me to name the others. They're out there. Brown. The Ivies are terrific. And they do get the cream of the cream. But what do they do when they get them to the campus? They make sure that the investment that they've made in getting that young person to their campus pays off. How does it pay off? By them staying and completing degrees. They don't want you to fail. They're going to do everything that they can so that you won't fail. And that's generally not the model that we have adopted in public higher education in this country, which is bring them in, see what happens after the first semester or after the first year, and then where are we? Well, we dropped down by this %. Well, okay, send the recruiters back out and bring in the next. It happens that way. It really still does. So now what we see is the group of us in here saying, let's bring them back. There's potential there. And I'm not going to go, I pulled out all the slides on the percentage increase that we need to get to reach the goals that have been established. But the reality is we're not going to get there even if we graduated all of our traditional students, and we're not anywhere near. Because as you can see, the SREB states, 16 SREB states trail the other 4 sections of the country. This is new stuff, if you will, from the It's not new stuff. It's just that it's new data. It's now running up through 2009. So we've taken a 5-year. I didn't. Joe Marks from our staff took a 5-year look. The U.S. This number still, it's in red. It still boggles my mind. You think about all of the students who have come to college. We have 38.1% of the 25 to 64-year-old age group who have an associate's degree or higher. Now just think about that number for a moment. 38%. 38% of all of those students, the adult population that we bring into our colleges and universities, have an associate's degree, not even a bachelor's degree. The SREB average is 34.9, but over that 5-year period, we're up 0.7%. We'll take anything that goes up. I want it to be 7%, and efforts such as the one going on in this state, I think we're eventually going to get there, although these numbers are big, and to move something up even a couple of percentage points is pretty significant. And you see the West, the Midwest, and the Northeast. Not surprised by the Northeast. I think it is still the case. There's only one state in the country that has, for its adult population, over 50, they reached the 50% factor. Associate degrees are higher, and that's the state of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we've got challenges. As we were saying at lunch, good to have challenges. Here's some specific Georgia numbers from that same report. And one of the things that Joe Marks from Data Services has done this year, and I'll get you this report. I don't want to say it was embargoed, but I said, can I bring 100 copies with me? And they said, well, it's still in draft. I don't think it's going to change, but I'll get you copies of this. It's just a short little report. I mentioned during the session, Tricia's session yesterday morning, there was a question about age and how we make these definitions above adults. One of the things I didn't say was there is some rational meaning why we choose 25. If you take an 18-year-old, the historical kind of point in age where someone goes off to college, you use the 50% rule. That is 6 years to complete the 4 years of the baccalaureate degree. Don't get me started on that. 6 plus 24 gets you to 24. So by your 25th year, you have a baccalaureate degree and you're out. Theoretically, you're out. So we use these 25 to 64 figures. That's the standard counting. What Joe has done is, and I did reference this yesterday, this notion of the young working age adult. And actually, I think that's a real sweet spot for us. It is clearly the case, 25 to 44. It is certainly the case if you were working in the real jungle of adults who don't diploma, there is an adage, and it is very, very true. If they drop out at 16, get them at 17, get them at 18, get them at 19, or get them at 20, because once they get into their 20s, the odds of getting them back in have just been doubled. The challenge is that much greater. I think that's the same case with many students who leave our post-secondary institutions. The sooner we can get them, the better. At the very least, we probably have a last good mailing address, so let's try to utilize that if we can. So you can see this 25 to 44 young working age adults. Georgia numbers now with an associate's degree in 2005, we were at 36.8. We're up 0.2 of a point to 37 in 2009. And without a bachelor's degree, folks, I'll just let you look at the numbers. Something has happened. And so I underscore these numbers and your effort as why this is, in fact, important. And so a couple of comments on the booklet that Mary Ellen held up. No time to waste. If you've not seen that, I would encourage you spend an evening, nice glass of Merlot or whatever, and or Chardonnay if you're white, and enjoy it is actually a good report. In the back of it, there are 50 recommendations for actions by states, by institutions, focusing on degree completion. Again, it's, let me put 3 fingers up, but it's tied to preparation out of high school for the rigors of college, getting them to college and keeping them in, or if you if you miss on those, on that second one in particular, then do something that focuses on getting students and adults in particular back into post-secondary education. And there are the three. And this is kind of standard for me now when I'm not talking about adult learning. There really is a vibe going on legislatively. Things will change. They're changing in Georgia. They're changing in a number of states. The old model of bring them in, get your numbers straightened out. We're going to pay you for FTEs that you generate at the front end. And if they don't graduate, that's all right. We'll get more FTEs we're going to develop next year. That model is going to change. They want us to drink the water. They're going to find a way to get us to the water. And the way to get us to that water is placing an emphasis not only on funding the aggregate numbers, but in effect incentivizing you to have students complete. And so I'm sitting upstairs looking, I actually stood upstairs during the session, jam-packed, standing room only, looking at what you're trying to do with your degree works. This is a marvelous tool. It's a great tool not only for advisors, but advisees, those who are in college, but its implications for the adult marketplace as a tool to have someone make an assessment about what they should do, where they should go, which is the best institution for them, I think is just terrific. There will be benefits that will accrue to you. I truly believe that. That is focused. And so I pulled out of those 50 recommendations, there are half a dozen that have a specific focus on adults. I'm actually going to do a session at the board meeting in 2 weeks where we're not only going to look at those 5, but I'm going to pick another 5 from the set of 50, and I'm going to say, are these these are applicable not only for adults, but for adults. And how well are you doing? I'm asking 2 states to respond to that question. So there are a number of things that are focused on the traditional age population. I think they work for adults. We ought to be thinking about this kind of thing. But here's kind of a set of bullets. One of them was to create a statewide initiative. ALC, you have it. Create accelerated pathways for adults. About doing that. One of my mantras, one of our principles is compress the time to degree. And you're already doing some of those things with your PLA efforts, and I think your transfer tools are going to be extremely helpful. But we need to do even more compression. I'm really intrigued by Texas's effort with the $10,000 baccalaureate. Don't have a lot of details on that yet, but now we're starting to see other evidences where the senior year would become the freshman year. A little bit different than AP. So people are going to try some intriguing models, I think, over the next several years to try to deal with this issue of getting more people through to degree completion. I've not heard, but I may just have not been in the right circles to hear about developmental work for adults. I made a comment yesterday in one of the sessions, I don't remember which one, and who I said it to. He or she will remember. Mine starts wandering here. That there was a chart. It was upstairs, so it was the morning session. It was the other afternoon sessions I spent over in A&B. They had a list of the 33 courses. Remember that? They were broken out into 3 categories, and the ones that are least used in AP, this is CLEP. All coming back. CLEP were 3 or 4 math courses. Adults stay away from math courses. They didn't like them when they're 18. They don't like them when they're 38. So we've got to deal with that. So this notion of how we craft developmental programming for adults, and how, in fact, I'm arguing how we craft developmental programming online for adults is going to be a real challenge for us. Work with business and industry. And I've seen some real linkages there and to some of the work that you, in fact, have going on that links the preparation, collegiate preparation with the workforce. Incentivize institutions to develop degree completion programs. I don't know how much you've been incentivized. Trish made the comment yesterday that everyone is here at your own volition. We said we want to do this Raise your hand if you want to join. We're up to 9 institutions. My question is, why aren't there 19? Or 29? Or 30, what, 39 in the system? 35. Well, 39 in Virginia. My days in Virginia pop back into mind. I'm not sure we're going to get everyone, but I think we need more than 9. And in fact, I think when this train really starts rolling, you're going to get hit with a demand-supply issue. You're going to have demand that will outstrip your capability of supplying it. And the way to do that is either expand programs. The Valdosta table over here say, yes, we'll expand. John and Jerry. Or we need other players. I think we need the combination. Transfer policies. You've got that in sight, and one of those aspects of that is the PLA, which is, you know, with all of the work that's gone on, and it's great work, and Judy was here yesterday talking about what Cale is doing, still a challenge. It is still not broadly accepted when there's a clear drift, clear movement towards looking at getting people, irrespective of the fact that we've got people in Washington wanting to define credit hours by measuring seat in a seat. We've been working at that for 30 years, finally moving away, and now they want to come back and define it in a very different way. Despite that, the movement is still towards competency-based learning. It makes sense. If, in fact, there's a real interest in getting people through to a degree, why do we want to put them in courses where they aren't going to get anything out of the course? And I just don't buy the argument that, well, we've got to fill a seat because there's tuition and fees that are being paid. I think that's a disservice to the people that we're trying to serve, and I think it's a real disservice to adults. So we're going to keep pushing this notion of degree completion and competency-based systems. So PLA works, and it's a variety of forms. I love the fact that you're just not saying it has to be portfolio. It can be any number of different options. And I saw the tool upstairs later in the year. I'm going to see if I can, Tanya, can I get into that system and take a look? Later in the year, December, right? Isn't it December? You can see it. Good stuff. Okay. Phase 2. Any of you know this woman? Ella McNeil? I don't. I'll tell a story about it. She's a 49-year-old mother, single parent, now grandmother. She lives in Austell. So the intrigue grows. She started college 25 years ago. She was in New Jersey at the time, did not finish college. She moved to Atlanta 13, 14 years ago, initially employed by the old Bell South, now our friends at AT&T. She, by her own admission, publicly has said there was a stigma not having a college degree, and it blocked her ability to move up at AT&T. And she's the first in her family to attend college. She is, and she's African American, I should come. She is the poster adult, not poster child, for the Adult Learning Consortium. But the headline in the Metro section, page 1 of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on May the 14th. That's Saturday or Sunday. I forget which now. Saturday, I think. As I'm sipping my coffee, it spews out. She earned her baccalaureate degree from Strayer University. Now, I have nothing against Strayer University. Nothing against Strayer University. Know the president well. I was at Virginia Tech. She was at the University of Virginia, and they fought on the football field, but we were good colleagues. She went to Strayer. And my friends at the Southern Poly table, I realize you're new to this program, but by my calculation, of the 9 programs, institutions that are in ALC, you're the closest. I had to drive pretty close to the Marietta campus at some point in time. I know there's a Strayer University rental facility essentially at the corner of 285 and 75. So that's fairly close. Not too far from you all either. So I simply did a little back. I'm big on back of the envelope. I actually used envelopes. I have calculated that if assuming that she, and this is probably an understatement, this is conservative, if she in fact needed 67 hours, they have 13 and a half semester hour terms at Strayer. Don't ask me why. But it cost her $25,000 for 67 credits. So if you assume that she brought the equivalent of an associate's degree in which she did not have, she probably took more hours. Maybe she took some in PLA. I don't know her. I just know her by AJC. Roughly $25,000, probably much more than that. Look what she could have done. I just took the simple calculation at some. So what does this mean? She's our poster child. She's your poster child. Adult. She's who we are after. And my belief is we're not going to get every student who goes to Strayer. We got to put up a better fight, folks. And we've got a lot of ammunition. We got a lot of things going for us. Who is Strayer? Actually, it's a businessman from the turn of the, not the last century, the previous century, who started a business school up in the Washington, D.C. area. Typists and shorthand people and that kind of stuff. We can beat them on cost. We can beat them on name recognition. Every one of your institutions can beat them on name recognition. We got far better business connections. I have to believe that our business connections with AT&T are stronger than the business connections that Strayer has with AT&T. I just have to believe that. We've got to utilize those in a better way. You have a 9-institution consortium. Let's get her to Valdosta State online. Let's get her into PLA. My point is, she should become the challenge, the person that we're after. That's what this program is about. Now, I would say we want the 29 and the 39 and the 59-year-old and everything in 69 and everything in between. So let's make Ella McNeil our mantra, if you will. And at some point in time, and I'm not sure who's doing the PR now, but somebody at Strayer, I applaud them for getting this article in. We need to get our own articles in about our adults who are completing through the consortium. All right, state authorization. Mike, this is for us, collective us. New federal requirements. I'm just going to go through this very quickly because you've heard about this. No physical presence, blah, 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 blah. There have been 2 Dear Colleague letters. You're going to love the term Dear Colleague letters. Yeah. One on March and one in April. I'm sorry, there's a tab 2 that is from an old slide. The key elements are they delayed this until 2014, the implementation until 2014. I'm going to caution you. No minimus test. That is to say, if you have a single student from your institution in another state, and that state requires authorization, you have got to pass muster. I am one who believes that if we had in place effective processes for complaints, much of this never would have happened. Water over the proverbial dam. It's done. It is done. And I would argue that even with the delay, the onus is still upon us as institutions. Good faith efforts. So the feds have said, you still must make good faith efforts by July the 1st. You got a couple of weeks. I know you've taken action. But you have to reach out to all of the states. Now, Mike, you said you've got a matrix. I'm anxious to look at the matrix at some point in time. 40 states, 38 states that have responded. You need to be able to document that you've reached out. That's considered good faith. And then theoretically by 2014, unless the federal regulations change, you will have to have been approved in a state in which you are required to be approved. It's pretty simple. Actually, not so simple. And then there's the comment, where things stand. And what I've cautioned institutions to do is don't say, okay, fine, we're fine until 2014. In point of fact, you need to be sure that you've made that good faith effort. And the system has done that for you by reaching out to each of the state authorization entities. And you said 2 states, Vermont, the old home state, and one other, that has said, we'll look at you as a system. And that's great. But the other states that have some authorization, you need to have some piece of paper or an email message or something that says, we think we have a student in your state and we're covered. Nothing else I want to say about that. A couple of ongoing national efforts. Some of you may or may not be aware of, but you should be aware of. And there's a new one to this list. Representative Fox from North Carolina has submitted a new bill, House bill, to essentially say, kill the state authorization requirements of in the federal regs. And I don't know whether she's going to be successful or not. If I had to guess, I would say probably not. But maybe if she is, that's fine. But here is my caution. Even if all of this goes away, what has happened over the last 6 months? You've reached out to institutions because you had to reach state institutions have to reach out to states. You've done that. So what are states now thinking? Boy, University of Georgia is operating in our state. We're going to regulate them. So the states are now feeling the sense of, well, we shirked our responsibilities. We're going to license or approve or authorize all 3 of those terms we use, you all. So if she's successful, I don't think our world is going to change dramatically. Maybe the feds will be off our back, but you're going to have to deal with the states. And at this stage, I'm not sure who I'd pick. I'd pick some of the states over the feds. I would not pick some of the states. Right, Mike? I mean, some of them are painful to deal with. So three kind of major efforts. President's Forum, which is a group out of Excelsior College for the most part, has a Lumina grant, created template or model for interstate reciprocity. I'll come back and make a couple more comments about that momentarily. They've got a hook in with the Council of State Governments. The Council of State Governments is thinking about creating this new compact legislation, and then they're going to go into each of the states and sell it. That's scary to me, and I've said that to them. Have you contacted the University System of Georgia about what your plan is? Have you contacted any state? They haven't. So the idea that we're going to have a third party that's going to come in through the Council of State Governments to create a compact for state authorization is, again, I'll use the term trouble. So there's that. There's an initiative by the Higher Education Secretariat and APLU, that's the old nostalgic, to work with the Department of Education to work something out. That's been quiet now for a couple of months, so exactly how that's going to play out, I don't know. And then SHIELD has kind of picked up the mantle from an initial effort to collect information from and about states and what they authorize and what the requirements are and when do you trip the wire for having to go through the process. So what has SREB done? Other than the fact that I've spent almost all my time over the last 6 months working on this. We worked with the WCET on a starter list, so we think we sent that out to everyone, contacted all of the institutions that participate in the electronic campus. Recommended action, not unlike what I suggested at that meeting in February on the Valdosta State campus, of ask questions, contact folks and ask questions. And then we convened our states about a month ago to work on what we call the free trade zone. This is the reciprocity agreement that I think can work for us, certainly in the 16 states. You don't need to read this. Essentially what this says, this is from the October 29th issue of the Federal Register where they talked about these new regs. They essentially said if you have a reciprocal agreement in place that shares authorization, that is if the state of Georgia's authorization is recognized by the state of Florida, vice versa, you have a reciprocal agreement and your institutions will be fine. We had that. Have had that for 13 years. It was embedded within the construct of the electronic campus. It's worked for 13 years with a couple of exceptions. There were clearly limitations on it, though. So I'm getting ahead of myself again. So the bottom line is the feds have said yay to reciprocal agreements. We said, yay, we're in line. We sent them a letter, sent all of our documentation up, some of it 13 years old, but nevertheless. And they said, thanks very much. I don't think I kept that in there. I didn't keep it in there. That's fine. And I spoke to a representative who said, we'll take a look at it. And we're fine with reciprocal agreements, but legal counsel has said we can't respond to we can't answer any more questions because there was a pending lawsuit for the gainful employment. It had nothing to do with state authorization, but they've clammed up. We still think it's the way out of the woods, so we pulled this meeting together. This is some history. I'll skip over this. Essentially what we had created was a 16-state free trade zone. And if you brought a course or program through the electronic campus from Valdosta State could deliver that to a Texan and you were fine. Conversely, Texas could deliver into another state. So you saw free trade zone for 16 states. It's worked quite well. When we pulled our states back together again, I used the term, we're going to renew the marriage, new vows. Let's get our states moving forward more progressively. Let's tighten up a few things that we maybe needed to tighten up and kind of make this thing work. And so I tried to say to our states, take advantage of what the feds have put in front of us, whatever is going to happen with the feds, and move to getting a reciprocal agreement set up. So I kind of back to the future. So we reconvened this group as an opportunity to create Free Trade Zone 2, the sequel. But a couple of things have happened, and this was the point I made to Mike over the carrots. We were in the vegetable section, I think, in line this minute. What the states have agreed to, absent even the kind of the more formal stuff that we're working on, is we are still going to recognize, for purposes of reciprocal arrangements, programs listed in the electronic campus. And that includes Arkansas and Alabama, the two states that as I go around talking to people outside our region say, what a pain in the backside Arkansas is, or Alabama is. So they have written to us saying they are authorized. So Mike, what I would ask you to do as part of your effort as a follow-up, if you talk to states that are part of the SREB family, I would simply say to them, are you recognizing the SREB's electronic campus free trade zone for purposes of authorization? Now, the hook is, there's a pretty big hook, you need to be listed in the electronic campus. And I want to say to you what I said to our state. This is not about SREB wanting to get everything into the campus. If you want to bring it in, that's fine. We're not trying to do that. The meeting, in a sense, was designed to come up with a different or additional strategy, maybe is a better term. So we'll do that, where you don't have to be in the electronic campus, but we still want to create reciprocal agreements. 16 states. The other 3 regionals are trying to do the same thing. And then the idea is the 4 regionals together. I can't remember when I'm retiring, but no, it's not going to be for long. That'll be fun. When we get to trying to link all of the states together, that will be a lot of fun. Okay, I'm going to end with a quick update on which is what Marilyn asked me to talk about. So all this other stuff was just kind of a build-up, if you will, to the adultlearner.org. We have a Lumina grant, 4-year grant. We're kind of in the 9th month, so it's birthing time. We should have something launched by early September. You'll be made aware of it. It was derailed because of all of this stuff that I just talked about. We met with the Lumina folks and said, I cannot move forward with confidence of saying, Valdosta State, bring your program in. I'll pick on Valdosta State. And don't worry about licensing. I know Virginia. I used to license institutions that came into Virginia. It's a problem. And I needed to have that assurance, and the feds wouldn't give us that assurance. But our states have now spoken up, which is really the point, Mike, that I was making yesterday. So we're back on schedule. We anticipate launching. We will be making a call to institutions, and in particular, institutions that have adult degree completion that you have in some form of stage of development to put into the program. Now, we're not trying to get a Georgian, let's pick up on a comment one, we're not trying to get a Georgian to take a program from Virginia. But the reality is, if the Georgian wants to take the program from Virginia, they can do that. We're simply trying to provide a set of options for students from any state about the program that best fits his or her needs. What you're doing with DegreeWorks is such a marvelous tool, because that's the road you're on. That's a great tool. So where do we get our content? Right here. Programs in, okay, Kentucky's at the top. You guys are running circle around. Kentucky, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and West Virginia all have programs that are operational. I still have you in the developmental category, but I'm getting ready to flip it. I'm getting ready to flip it. And Tennessee and Texas under discussion. Almost everyone in the region is talking about doing something with adult learners. So there's a lot of competition. Not only do we have the Strayers and the Phoenixes and the others of the world, but we will be having these folks as well. All right, so there's my tip to Uncle Sam. We'll come after you, in the best sense of that word. And I'll leave you with this. There's another resource out there that came out of the set of 16 or 17 grants that Lumina let. This is called the Adult College Completion Network. It's a free service. It's kind of like the comments that were being talked about upstairs, where folks can bring issues and you can interact and talk about what challenges you might have. It's at, and there's the URL at the bottom. So it's made up of not only the grantees, but a variety of others who are involved with adult learning activities. That's what it's designed to do. This is a project of WCET, but they just have, they're the recipient of the grant. This actually belongs to all of the grantees, but also all of us who are involved with adult learning. So I invite you to check the site out and get involved. And with that, a couple of web addresses. You always have to have those. There's an email address, but I'm pretty easy to reach. And I'll stop there, and thank you very much for the invitation, and I hope I hit a few buttons for you today.